Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Webb Bostic. I'm president at Wonder Cave. We're a text messaging platform purpose built for the political advocacy and civic engagement space. And I'm pleased to be joined today by Ken Tracy. Ken is the chief client officer at Campaign HQ and new fan of Charlotte, North Carolina, as of yesterday?
Yesterday, yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
So
Tell us a little bit about yourself and Campaign HQ.
absolutely, yeah. So I've been through the Charlotte airport, I don't know, about a dozen times in different connections. So this is my first time actually in Charlotte. So I guess that's the only time that you actually get accounted is when you put your feet in on the ground
Yeah,
outside of the airport. So it's been a fantastic city, and you guys have been a great host. So thank you for that.
appreciate that.
Yep. So as Webb said, I'm Ken Tracy. I'm the chief client officer at Campaign HQ. We are phone-based phone vendors. We work on the political side. We work on the issue advocacy, corporate affairs side, as well as the Frankton official side of stuff. So anything you can dream up with a 10-digit phone number, we can do, whether that's telephone town halls, live calls, automated calls, patch throughs, fall into that world, as well as text messages. We do a lot of text messages, which is where we partner.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, Campaign HQ, we're thrilled to be a partner with you guys, particularly as we're going to talk about today, kind of
Yep.
working through some of these industry changes and challenges and getting prepared for what should be a really interesting
Yeah,
2026. But yeah, again, thanks for making the trip,
not a
and
problem.
yeah, looking forward to this conversation because this topic around iOS
Hmm.
26, all of the interesting and kind of like buzzworthy
Sure.
features
Yep.
that have rolled out has certainly been something that has been tip of the tongue for us for gosh almost 6 months.
Yeah.
um and so yeah, like we come in here today, we're 6 months removed from when Apple first
Hmm.
kind of released like, hey, this is what we're going to be doing, and now we're about 2 months into it.
Hmm.
And so for us, it's we're going to talk about what we've learned over the last few weeks and also just dispel a bit of like the myth and the fear I
Yep.
think that has come with all of it, because I know we've had a lot of conversations and there have been a lot of folks in the space that have kind of led with the fear, uncertainty,
Hmm.
and doubt. um, and so I look forward to chatting with you about that. And
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
yeah, and all other things as we like round the year out. It's been an interesting
That it has.
off cycle
Yeah. Yeah.
year. It's felt very on cycle in many ways.
Hmm.
But in this space, it's all about gearing up for ultimately an even year that's going to be
Yeah.
a should be a really really interesting one. So,
Absolutely.
um, well, awesome. I'm curious, kind of going back to your experience. So you've been at
Mhm.
Campaign HQ for how long now?
Going on this will be my 10th year.
Okay,
Yep.
and you've been in just generally kind of voter contact space, just political arena for how long?
A long time, longer than I like to admit. I'm now at that age where I get to say that by turning 40 this year. But yeah, I started out when I was 21 years old. I call it the greatest accidental career path that anyone can ever find in. You find yourself working in campaigns or on the vendor side or somehow involved in politics, and you get bit by the bug. And I'm sure, like many people watching this, you try to get out of it or you think you want to get out of it. And then all of a sudden you get dragged in harder and you're more motivated than ever before. And so I've had a few different times where that's happened to me. But here I sit today. And it's one of the greatest, opportunities to be involved, and especially the work that we get to do where we work in all 50 states. We work at the state level, the federal level. So we get to play a major role in a lot of different, legislative policies that take shape, as well as winning campaigns as well. So it's a lot of fun from that perspective, and the impact that we get to have gets amplified by the work that we do.
That's awesome. And I I assume that there are going to be a lot of people that check this conversation out, that know Nicole as
Oh
well.
yeah, Nicole Schlinger. She started Campaign HQ 25 years ago, and we've been through a few different iterations. But I mean, she's a staple in the political world.
Hmm.
If you go to any conference, it doesn't really matter where it is in the country, you're bound to see Nicole
Yeah.
or myself. And we often joke, if you know Nicole, you'll get this joke. But when we walk into the room, we're often viewed as the world's largest and biggest political consultants together. So yeah, so she's very well known in the industry. And so
How did y'all link up originally?
yeah, so I started working with her back in 2016. And she obviously even at that time was a staple in the industry. And so being able to join Campaign HQ and have her be one of my mentors is one of those things that you get really fortunate with. And you know, sometimes you have to be a little bit more lucky than you are good. And so she had an opportunity that she needed on the operation side at that point, and I was looking for a change from where I was, and just the timing just worked out perfectly.
Great. Yeah. It's all about timing. I
Yep.
feel like with all of this. I have a similar story in that regard. So
Yeah.
I did not imagine I'd be in this space, but I'm really glad I am because it's
Hmm.
really it's been a lot of fun to build what we build. And you know, I guess for the sake of context, Wonder Cave we serve is really kind of like this purpose built service provider,
Yeah.
um, specifically on the text messaging side of things,
Hmm.
to help folks like Campaign HQ be able to kind of layer that into your solution
Yep.
set and service offering, and we kind of have to play this in between game of partnering with someone like you guys
Right.
and then make sure we're a good partner to the industry, like the almost like the cross section of telecom meets kind of the political space.
Tough spot to be in.
Yeah, really. And that's my background. I come from bandwidth, which is, originally was voice over IP,
Okay.
got into, mobile messaging and the, grinding like telecom into software,
Hmm.
which has been really interesting. But so I'm thankful I have that experience and, have met folks in that arena. But yeah, there's a lot of as we will talk about, I think it's an education because it's like the collision of these different industries that must work together and be coordinated, or else it gets really messy.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think oftentimes, and we saw this with, and in a lot of different iterations, right? With different laws and legislations that have been passed. But I think the best example on the texting side of this was like the 10 DLC registration that came out, where we saw a lot of start stops with that, that is carrier imposed. But that the political world gets, it's an afterthought in most places and most times, and how the industry wants to tackle some of the challenges that they see, right? And I think that's the same thing that we saw with Apple and the iOS 26. Is I think the political deliverability and how things would be delivered through live calls and text messages and those types of things on iPhones wasn't in the developers roadmap. It wasn't in their what they were thinking through of problems and working through those solutions. And so I think for us, on the political side of things, right? Free speech gets thrown around a lot, and it's on the forefront of what our country is, and obviously in our Constitution. But it's something that we have to. It's a good reminder of like we always have to fight for. We always have to be an advocate for ourselves in this space because otherwise, if we don't speak up and say something, nobody else will for us.
Yeah, well put. And that's a good segue. We'll dive into kind of the iOS changes.
Hmm.
Maybe a little bit of context as to kind of what did change with
Yep.
iOS 26. And so um, we'll tackle it at a high level. So essentially, I think the spirit, speaking for Apple, I think the
Hmm.
spirit of, putting more control in kind of the user's hands and just adding more, it's almost kind of like email filtering
Yep.
is, I think the spirit is well intentioned.
Yep.
It's
I agree.
because there is definitely a proliferation of like nefarious use cases in the texting channel. I mean, you get like the scam text about like, hey, make $3,000 an hour if you
Hmm.
just sign up for this, or fake HR, or mail fraud, pay your toll. Like
Yep.
a lot of very clear examples of nefarious activity. Um, but in iOS 26, it was the expansion of the unknown sender
Yep.
inbox as well as the addition of a spam folder. And I think right out of the gate, the concern was if if we're going to see messages that are not considered known senders start to be dumped into this inbox silently, what is that gonna do not only for our space, but just the broader commercial
Right.
kind of text messaging channel for folks who aren't just saving every single message that they're going to sign up to hear that's not like their close
Hmm.
friends and family.
Right.
And is there going to be a chilling effect? I think that was the initial response. Um, and anything you'd want to add in terms of just like what else was added for iOS
Yeah,
26?
so I mean, I think I think your point is well taken. Like this isn't about beating up Apple. I think that what they were doing was trying to answer a call from their consumers, right? I'm a consumer of Apple products, and I think everybody receives those spam text messages, spam phone calls, that are usually, especially on the call side of things, illegal.
Hmm.
And so, so to for them to answer, the needs and the desires of their consumers, to give them more power, is exactly what you expect any, free market, company to do, right? So,
Hmm.
and so I think the more important thing to me was how we respond to things, and I think, at this point, it's important for us to dispel some of those myths and rumors that we're going to get into here. But the other filtering aspect of it, beyond the text messages, was also on the live call side of things. Having a phone butler. For lack of a better term there, or phone assistant, who would ask, what's your first name, what's your last name, what's the purpose of the phone call, and then alerting that person, the end user, to that this is an incoming call and whether they want to take it or not. And so so when that was first announced, for us on the phone side, we've dealt with phone butlers when, everybody, when every universe was made up of, 90% landlines before. Now that every universe is made up of about 80% cell phones, that wasn't as much of a concern. Android had some version of this before, but, you know, for us, we've dealt with it for a long time, so it wasn't that big of a concern. It was just interesting for us, and we wanted to make sure we tested out how that looked in practice. And I think we actually came to, I think it's actually a benefit, to us in our space, of how that actually worked out on iPhones. So
Interesting. We'll get into that here in
yeah.
a minute. I will say, just from mid June to mid September, when iOS 26 was rolled out officially to the public, it was really neat to see the coordination between you know folks like us, like service providers, our providers,
Hmm.
carrier involvement. So we're looking up like the telecom stack
Yep.
on the political side of things, kind of working within, like the AAPC. Kind of, we brought a committee together, the texting committee, to discuss like how do we handle this, who do we work with from the TCR staff, that side of things, as well as like lobbying efforts.
Hmm.
You had like institutional organizations who were calling Apple in and saying like, here are our concerns, which I think did a really nice job just to say that's all on the table.
Yep.
Apple can't claim ignorance.
Yep.
And I do think, kind of back to an earlier point, I do think it was a bit of education. It's like,
Yeah.
not sure if you thought about this from
Hmm.
a product standpoint, but this is just in practice what we're really concerned about.
Right.
And I do think some things were changed during the beta phase, but it only could happen with communication
Yeah.
and coming to the table to talk about it. So uh, it was really neat to see that. I
Hmm.
do think that was very well worth. Um, I think folks in the space, and we disagreed. I think jointly we're saying, well, just wait and see.
Right.
We don't, and we were like, no, like you have to do something.
Yep.
You have to have conversations about it, and I think that was the right move.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the proactive approach that we took. I know we had lots of conversations, between Wonder Cave, and Campaign HQ. Walter from our team, sits on that AAPC board, and I know that they were instrumental in, really bringing forth, the concerns and how we can navigate this space with Apple. And it was also really interesting to see, the different advocacy or different groups go to advocate with the White House to Apple.
Hmm.
And so we, on the live call side, obviously there's a lot of big, text, users in the space, from the different committees, and from the conversations that I was having and Nicole was having, we were noticing, or at least, quickly understanding, that live calls wasn't a part of that conversation. So,
Yeah, right.
so the nice part about having those conversations early with really strong partners was we got to raise our hand too and say,
Yeah.
hey, no one's thinking about live calls. So we were able to put together some good talking points for, our voice, at least, to get into those conversations. And so, I 100% agree with you. I do believe that some of those changes did take effect from those early conversations, and taking the wait to see approach, I think, would have been the wrong one here.
So when we were kind of heading down the road of like, all right, we're moving out of beta. This thing is going live in mid September. And those early weeks,
Hmm.
we're here with the benefit of hindsight. But at that time, what were you hearing from your customers?
Yep.
What myths were you I guess, acknowledging like, hey, these are out there.
Yep.
This is what we have to dispel at that time, and then we'll talk about the data that helps back up that.
Yeah. So I mean, I think probably the best answer to that question, I think we should probably go back to like when this was first announced, 6 or 7 months ago. And when it was first announced, obviously there's a concern when something's going to be changing your workflows, right? And for us, we're very process driven on the execution side of things that we do, and then on the creative side of things that we do with our different campaigns or organizations that we work with, we're structured, right? I wouldn't say we're process oriented, but we know the best practices of what works. And so for us, we wanted to make sure that again we took a proactive approach of what works and what doesn't work
Hmm.
and start testing it out. So, we got a lot of new iPhones, put the beta on it, and we seeded those into every live call and text message program that we did, so we could see in practice how things looked and operated. And we worked with our clients because obviously there was some concern there for them of leading up to it, and even though it wasn't released, we wanted to, like I said, get a good handle of when it would get released in September, that we could go to our clients and say, here's creatively how the best way to deliver your message. Here's from a process standpoint of how we can execute that the best way.
Hmm.
And While we were hard at work looking at those different changes that we knew that we needed to make, there was a lot of industry insiders, and I think no ill intent on their part, raising the red flags, right, and saying that this is going to be a big problem, and it very much could have been, right. But On the other side of it, with the like as you said, with hindsight, we know that it wasn't, and to me, the disservice wasn't raising the red flag. It was that once it wasn't a problem, they disappeared and they didn't come back and say, hey, good news, this wasn't a problem.
Right.
So, you have a lot of consultants who are out there who, during this election cycle heard about it, but then dug in deep and started really focusing on 2026 and working with their clients that are going to, have filing deadlines coming up and have to do
Hmm.
fundraising. And so that might not be on the forefront. And so these, thought leaders within the industry that they, maybe get some of their most, important information from, said that this was a problem, but then never came back and course corrected. So they might still believe that this is a problem. So,
Interesting. It's like when you're at the beach, red flags up, bad rip current.
yeah,
There has to be a green flag that then follows it at some point
right.
that the water's fine. Um, that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
But
For our Midwesterners, I'll translate
yeah,
into to a tornado alarm.
there we go.
Yeah.
All clear.
Yep.
Um, well, I think you have to caveat all of it with this is a great example of just the industry shifts over
Hmm.
time.
Yep.
I'll be curious. I have kind of a saved question for later
Okay.
about like, you've been in this space for a number of years and just what you've seen change. But it's a good example, kind of a microcosm of whether it be a regulatory change,
Hmm.
now it's hardware, OS. Um, it's all about just preparedness and just being willing to dive in and let data speak.
Yep.
So what kind of, now again, a couple months out from the release, in terms of just data and observations,
Hmm.
you mentioned the call butler
Hmm.
actually is maybe a net benefit.
Yeah.
What are you seeing on your side?
Yeah, so I mean, from a deliverability standpoint on the text messages, I mean, we're seeing, not much of a change. If anything, we're seeing a little bit of an uptick in engagement
Hmm.
from folks, and so the key here, and I think it's important to understand that well, I think that uh, what we do and as a company is we're is amazing. I think we're always on the forefront. I don't want to take away from other vendors who are out in the space who also probably took a very similar approach to
Hmm.
us. Um, and so with that being said, the way that things are delivered now through the text messaging and really focusing on good best practices of having them be time sensitive so they can go into the unknown sender versus going into the promotions or transition or transactional folder, or which would be worst of all, the spam folder, right.
Hmm.
I think people, the receiver of those or the end user of those they still have to see, they still see them, they still have to clear them out, it still shows as a notification, um and and it's just delivered a little bit differently to them now. And I think the other thing that we've done is in terms of both the time sensitivity, but also encouraging replies. Because once you get replies, you can go to the main, the main folder, things
Right.
like that. So, using those good best practices, I think we've seen, like I said, either no difference or even an uptick, right? Especially on the engagement side, where we're looking and seeking out replies to get into that main folder, and I think that's been a good benefit. On the live call side, with the phone butler, we've changed up our scripts and our introductions of how we do that. And, now when you call, it shows up on your lock screen and it shows this person's calling. So you can say, this is Ken Tracy for Senate. We're calling quickly. We're calling to remind you to go and vote today. And that shows up as a text on your lock screen, and it doesn't ring your normal ring. It's a little bit more obnoxious. So you get a little bit of an additional hit on that. So whether they decide to take that live call and that you actually get to engage with our caller, to get that connected call, or they decide that they don't want to take it at that time because they're in a meeting or they're in a podcast like this, right?
Mhm.
It showed up as a text view on their lock screen, but then it also shows up in their voicemails for them to listen to later, and then transcribed as what was said to. So,
I
so
wonder if
with
that like helps in a way really drill into like who that engaged audience ultimately is
I
going to
think
be
it
for
does.
y'all.
And what's nice is because now for the same cost that you would have already paid for a live call or a voicemail, you're now getting an additional hit
Mhm.
on the voter contact side of things. And we are constantly testing. We're constantly looking at what our engagement rates are on both text messaging and live calls. Either about every quarter. And so this time we did it a little bit earlier than we normally do because of the release was in September.
Mhm.
And we actually saw our live call connect rate actually increase to 70%
Wow.
on cell phones from where we were before. And so I don't think that that's necessarily just because of iOS 26. I think it's because a lot of different factors all playing at once. But we saw a much better or much higher increase in our connected calls on our cell phones than I would have anticipated
You didn't
from
see a
where some.
material decrease.
Not at all. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, yeah, because I mean, generally we were seeing, between 60 and 65%
Mhm.
connect rate, and now we're seeing 70 north. So it was awesome
That's
to see.
fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, for us on the Wonder Cave side, we again kind of sit at somewhat of that like provider level
Hmm.
um with this view just to kind of across the business. But yeah, in terms of particularly like the link clicks,
Yep.
because that gives us a very granular view into the OS.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but for iOS, it stayed relatively flat. In fact, I think in the last few weeks we saw like a little bit of an uptick.
Hmm.
But that was encouraging for us.
Right.
I think folks were expecting to see a pretty noticeable drop,
Yeah.
um, because again, it's not necessarily going to impact the delivery of the text in terms of what the carriers are saying. Yep, we got your text and took it to the handset.
Hmm.
That was the fear, is that it would be almost like a false positive,
Yeah.
that it looks like it delivered, but it just got tossed in the trash
Right.
essentially. So the clicks show us that that's not the case.
Yep.
Our clients are just we've got a good feedback loop on other conversion data. So whether it's you know funds raised, um, engagement, where advocacy like petition signs, survey completes, things
Yep.
like that, also non-impacted.
Yep.
Um, so you have to look at objective data,
Hmm.
and that is telling us that we're in a good spot. 2 months in, I think when we were looking back at iOS 18's rollout,
Yep.
it was 3 or 4 months before they got to about 75+% adoption. Um, so this is a good sign. We're 2 months in. I would
Hmm.
assume that we're over halfway there in terms of people
Yep.
upgrading to
I agree.
iOS 26.
Yep.
And so if the lion's share are there and we're not seeing an impact, that's a very positive thing for us.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think from from a hard data standpoint, I think we have we have really good indicators. My caution there is like we should continue to test, we should continue to monitor, we should continue to look to improve.
Right.
Because just because we feel like we're in the winner's circle today doesn't mean that the race is over for or the next race isn't going to be on for us to make sure that we can maintain that. And so at least for us in our perspective, and I know from you and our conversations that we've had is we're this is not something that we are running away from or moving on to the next thing. I guess is
Hmm.
probably the better way to phrase that. This is something that we're going to continue to monitor at least all the way through 2026. And I think that's the benefit of ourselves and a benefit to our clients who are our number one partner and getting elections and legislation and official communication out there to voters and the like.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's not a rest on your laurels kind of
Yep.
thing. It never should be, but I do think it was an interesting about face for all of us
Hmm.
because it was like, okay, well, how do we take this situation and raise the quality,
Yep.
um, or at least like communicate that to our clients and our partners. And so you mentioned a few of those things where it's like, how am I ensuring that I'm going to get the best engagement? Not just like inbox tactics, but like truly like messaging.
Hmm.
Do I, we release the ability to send like a virtual contact card that
Yep.
is, hey, like we want you to be engaged constituent or supporter, and like here's a way to make sure that like it's us or no it's me candidate or
Yeah.
things like that where it's pairing like urgency with authenticity.
Hmm.
um but I think it is, it'll be interesting to see because obviously you walk on the street and ask people about political texting, they'll tell you like I got way too many of them
Yeah.
last November
Yep.
in particular. And so it's the challenges for us, like in this space, like what are we doing to just to help that like raise the level, the quality level,
Yep.
um, because that in and of itself could be a net negative, particularly as we get deeper into an even year.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think the for us at Campaign HQ, we spent I mean, from when text started to become a really big, important factor in political fundraising, political communication for get out the vote or persuasion, and even now that we're starting to see on the corporate affairs and advocacy side to push legislation, more so in the last couple of years, we set on the pedestal to be like we should be having two-way communication. We should be engaging those voters or those constituents with a conversation, authentic conversation back and forth. And the marketplace, bared out where nobody wanted those, which was fine. It was a disappointment, to us, but for as phone vendors were like, man, the engagement of and the user experience for that voter, that constituent is just so much better. There's so much more value there
Hmm.
that you can create from a candidate to a voter or an advocacy group to a constituent to help them push legislation. So I would love to see that swing back. I obviously as I briefly mentioned, but as we might get into a little bit more is having replies back and forth with them, saving that contact card, so that way they know exactly who's sending them a communication.
Well, now there's like a technical reason
Exactly.
to do it.
To do it,
Yeah.
exactly. So hopefully that technical reason actually does lead to a better user engagement because like you said, everyone feels like they get too many text messages. But if you feel like there's a value as a voter to as a reminder or a persuasion push or information that I otherwise wouldn't get from this text message or from this live call, I think that's what people are craving.
Hmm.
I was I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I was reading an article about how podcasts have seen such a huge impact in 2024, and it was because so many people were actively trying to avoid traditional media, right?
Mm.
And because they're trying to just avoid traditional media, we saw the rise of politicians going on different podcasts, and we saw a big benefit to a lot of folks and those politicians in those ways. And so to me, like, what does that tell us, right? That tells us that people are looking for an authentic place to hear their information, but where they can also feel like they're engaged. And so if that's what people are craving, we should deliver that to them.
Yeah, that's well put. Um, kind of shifting gears a little bit and looking ahead to 2026.
Hmm.
Um, and you mentioned kind of best practices. Like, where do you kind of see, you know, on the text and call side?
Yeah.
Like, what are some of the the big initiatives y'all are pushing for next year with your clients?
Yeah, early and often.
Hmm.
I think, especially, on the voter contact side of things, but this is a through line through all of politics, right? Consultants in the early days spend a lot of time and focus on what am I going to do with mail? What am I going to do with TV? How many door knockers am I going to need? What does my volunteer recruitment look like? And then obviously the underlying thing that funds all that fundraising, right?
Hmm.
And then at the very end, they think about phones, whether that's live calls or whether that's text messages. And so, and the RNC put out a study a few years ago, which shouldn't have been a surprise, but it was when I read it, that it takes 7 contacts with a voter for them to make a change, right, in their habits, right?
Mm.
And as people that do sales, I was like, well, that's sales, right? That's marketing.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't have been a surprise, but it was. And so when at least for us, when we're talking to our clients, is depending on what your budget is, you should do all the things, right? There's a place for mail, there's a place obviously for TV, digital, and things alike, but don't think of phones as the last where I'm going to spend my last few dollars that I have, or the
Right.
last day before the election. Obviously with text messaging, there's 10 DLC registration and some client compliance things that need to be taken care of, at least a week in advance. And live calls, obviously we can still get up and running, within a couple hours. But if that's not already a part of your plan and you're thinking of when you want to do that and how you want to place those, you're doing a disservice to yourself. And then also with that authentic, aspect of it is having a connective communication between what the people are seeing on TV, what people are seeing in the with the mail piece that they get, what they're hearing on the phones and their text
Hmm.
message. So it's not
Not
just
just siloed
a bunch of
channels. Yeah.
different things coming at you, and it feels like it's
Hmm.
coming from a different source or a different voice. I think we could do a better job of that. Um, and then and having those, the phone calls should not be the last thing you do the day before the election. It should be when the mail piece is going to drop, or before your door knockers are going to be in a neighborhood. You should be sending a text message to warm those doors, right?
Yeah.
Letting them know that they're going to be in the neighborhood afterwards. Go into a neighborhood, you're going to knock on 10 doors. You might talk to 2 or 3 people, but that means 70% of the people that in that neighborhood you didn't. So a live call afterwards or a text message afterwards to capture that information that you were trying to with the walkbook. I think things can work better together if
Hmm.
the different campaign managers and consultants and those who are making those decisions and those strategies are thinking through things in a holistic way
Yeah.
versus a siloed way.
So you were almost consulting to the consultant a
Yeah,
bit in
a
that
little bit.
regard. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's great. And I think we were just talking about how like data doesn't care about your feelings, like data
Yeah.
doesn't lie. And that is true for, I call, good old texting, right?
Hmm.
Like particularly in this country, over time, people just prefer more and more to be reached via text.
Yep.
Um, that doesn't take away from other channels necessarily,
Sure.
because like you can make we're seeing the rise of direct mail, like in the value there. Phone calls, if you can
Hmm.
connect with someone, that's hugely valuable, but you can't ignore that,
Hmm.
and particularly like with younger people as well, like they just would rather
Right.
be texted and communicate that way, so long as it's something that is wanted and feels legit and that
Hmm.
can be trusted. But in this country, people read their texts. People maintain close to, maybe not my wife, but close to an inbox zero
Right.
on text. Um, and over 90% are read within the first 90 seconds.
Yep.
So you can't ignore that, and it is, like you said, it can't be the last thing you think of, because it
Hmm.
in and of itself is just a ubiquitous channel that gets just the most targeted almost impressions, you
Yep.
could say. So um and it's not going anywhere. I think we'll talk about here in a minute just where we're seeing texting going from an industry innovation standpoint.
Hmm.
um but it is still far and away the most used mobile messaging
Absolutely.
platform in this country, WhatsApp is huge outside of the US,
Yep.
but SMS, MMS is what folks are going to first to communicate.
Yeah, I agree, and I think on the data point of things, like, what's nice about text messaging and live calls is that there's such a measure you can measure it in such a concise way, right? As you mentioned, 90% of text messages are read within a couple of minutes. A live call, we know exactly who picked up, who answered what question, how long they were on the phone with our callers, and those types of things, right? And you know. At a 70% connect rate, it's a little bit less than the 90%, but it's much better than sending out a mail piece that I think you should do, but you can't measure who read it fully, how long did they stay engaged with it, right?
Right.
Or even a TV spot, right? You can know that it played on a screen, but you don't know if that person was in the room. Did they go and grab a soda? Did they go and that was the time that they wanted to go, stir their food because it's simmering as they're waiting for people to get home, right?
Hmm.
So that's not to take away from those things because you should absolutely do what your budget can afford, but again, to the point of when you can measure things, those shouldn't be the last things that you think of. Those should be
Yeah,
the first things.
100%. All right. So where's this space going? So back in what was that 2022, the 10 DLC rollout, we all had to figure that out.
Yeah.
Um, all shifting sands. It
Hmm.
keeps you on your toes. All this stuff. I think the big kind of innovation conversation is RCS,
Hmm.
Rich Communication Services. It's essentially moving SMS and MMS into kind of like, speaking of Apple, like an
Right.
iMessage type experience, or even like a WhatsApp
Sure.
experience. So um, that has also been a topic of conversation with our clients. Um, it's going to just take some time in general, and I
Hmm.
think the political space is going to be towards the caboose on
Yeah.
use cases that kind of get folded into it. Um, but I do think there's a lot to look forward to with it, just because you get you just get more data, you
Hmm.
get read receipts, you can use, you actually get better branding. Like on the text outreach, you'll have like a kind of a hero bar of saying like this is the
Yep.
brand in terms of trust.
Yeah.
Uh, it 100x's your media file size, for when you're sending video, pictures, all that stuff. So a lot to look forward to, and like where the space is moving, and just uplifting the text channel and not forcing people to think, all right, where else should I go with this?
Yep.
Um, I'm not sure if you've had many conversations around it, but
Not a lot of conversations now, but I love to hear the details, especially the media side of things. Like, you know, I always encourage each one of our clients, like, send a video, right? It doesn't need to have a huge production value. A very prominent senator, we did a lot of work for, and we have over the years, and he would just have his staffer, funny enough, with an iPhone, just record him, encouraging people to go out and vote or to give a donation or to join on a telephone town hall, whatever it might be. And again, to the point that we've talked about, having that authentic communication of like, he took the time to record this message, right? It's a
mhm,
20-second message. It was either in his office, sometimes it was, outside and it was a little windy, right? But having that piece is such a valuable tool that sets you apart. So, whether, you're running for, school board or you're running for, Senate or the White House, like taking that extra bit, a little bit of time and understanding that it doesn't need to be this big 4K production with hair and makeup and a big script. It can just be just a simple, hey,
mhm,
today is election day.
yeah.
Polls are open from here to here. Go and vote.
And you literally see who it is.
Exactly. Yep.
No denying that.
Yep.
Awesome. Shifting gears once again, because of your experience, I'm
Hmm.
curious, what, like, for your clients with texting and calling,
Hmm.
can you think of an example when you've had to kind of make that convincing argument, like, hey, this is something that you should care about, and they were like pleasantly surprised?
Yeah. The one thing I would say is telephone town halls right
Hmm.
now. That is something that A few years ago, you could only call out to landlines. Now we can call out to cell phones at the same time as landlines. As I mentioned before, if you look at any given universe size, 80% of it's going to be cell phones, maybe 20, the other 20% are going to be landlines. And so if you weren't able to contact that 80%, you're just, you're leaving a lot of folks spoken to, right? And so now that we can call out to cell phones, talking to clients about the value of those events is because, we call out to, I would say our average universe size is about 100,000 people that we call out to. You're going to get, anywhere from 8 to 12% participation on those calls.
Mm.
And so, for any candidate speaking to 8,000, 12,000 people at once, I mean, unless you're President Trump, you're not speaking to that many people at any one given time,
Mhm.
for an in-person event, at least, right? And so to have that value, works out to like $1 to $3 per person who joins. Some people, pick up and like, this isn't for me. Some people stand for the whole hour. So we're seeing an engagement rate of anywhere from 7 to 10 minutes. So when you continue like talking about the data, you continue to drill down, it's anywhere from like 10 cents to 25 cents per minute of engagement with the voter, with the candidate. And like, that's about as cheap of a voter contact that you can get.
Hmm.
And so, talking to a lot of different consultants and groups and candidates about this is one thing, and they can kind of see the vision for it. But then once they do one, again, we've had prominent senators who are like, I don't know if I want to do this. And, that's an hour of my time, and it's an hour of an important person's time. And then on the other side of it, they're like, well, I want to do one every week. And
Yeah.
because they get excited from it, because there's a two-way conversation. You can go into those. They're asking questions live. The audience is asking questions. The participants, so voters from their constituency are asking them, direct questions, and they're answering them direct. So, from a grassroots standpoint, from Betty Lou, and her small town, getting to speak to the senator of her state on a live event is that's something she'll remember. She'll talk about, right?
Mhm.
And so it's a really authentic conversation. And I think the candidates feel really charged on the outside of it. So aside from the cost benefit of it, or the value of it, just the benefit of having, again, a really authentic conversation with those who, are going to go out and vote for you is been a really big game changer. And we've seen that just 3x this last year, and next year we're gonna.
Wow.
I mean, I think, if we do, I wouldn't be surprised if we do well over 200 telephone town halls next year for our different clients and candidates.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, well, obviously, this, you know, y'all's success is in large part to you just being a road warrior.
Yeah.
You and the team, Nicole, everyone else.
Hmm.
You mentioned you've flown through Charlotte
Yeah.
a lot,
Yeah.
probably too much. I think a lot of people know Charlotte just from that airport,
Sure.
and maybe coming to town it gives you a better representation
Yeah.
of Charlotte. But uh, I'm curious, what's a memorable road warrior story?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, the easy answer was like this last summer, I think, within 14 days, I was in 8 different states.
Wow.
And so that was a trek. And on the other side of it, I felt fine. And then throughout the entire experience, then the day after I got home, where I was going to be home for about a week and a half, I just got sick. It's like my body was just like, I know we get to rest, so
That's
I'm going to
enough.
make you
Yeah.
rest, kind of a thing. So, so that was one, the most recent one that was just kind of, that comes to mind. But one that's probably not so much of a road warrior story, but of a campaign fun story is every campaign cycle, about anywhere from 10 days to 2.5 weeks, we take all of our team from our DC office, and we combine that with our headquarters in Iowa. So everyone works in the same room. We all are marching together, and it just makes it easier as our clients are coming in and asking for things last minute, and getting things up and running from that spot. We eat our meals together, breakfast, lunch, and most dinners end up being eaten together. And so it hardens us, right?
Yeah.
It trauma bonds us a little bit together. But what's awesome about that is, we don't know what each day is going to take, but every single one of us are all hands on deck,
Dialed
and
in. Yeah.
not one person leaves that office before anybody else does. So
Hmm.
we all get there about the same time, but then we're all walking out, locking the door while it's 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. depending on where those projects were in the country that day. But to me, like that, regardless of what we do out on the road or the people that we meet and things like that, to me, the real fun, the real thing that I look forward to every election cycle is when we get to all draw back and do what we call command center.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I think it's important for folks who are tuning in and your clients and
Hmm.
prospective clients just to hear the commitment level.
Yeah.
And that's, like you said, that's forged over time too,
Yep.
and through the fire. And we feel the same way, just as like a platform provider, because we
Hmm.
know how hard our clients, how hard you guys are working, and we're an important part of that. We got to make sure the pipes are running, trains are running.
Yep.
So it is fun. It makes it exciting. It's kind of different times have different challenges, but that one is like straight up.
Yep.
Like you got to execute.
Yeah, and in the
Yeah.
moment, sometimes it's like, when you're the, third, fourth, fifth, 10th day in a row where you've put in you know, 15 to 18-hour day, it does suck. Like I don't try to lie. But when you look back on it, you're like, man, those memories, those moments of, working with our team members and the efforts that they put in for our clients and, and especially seeing the victory. I mean, our team gets so invested in our clients' races where like election night's fun because like we're all over the map. Like I said, we work in all 50 states, so we're watching things closely. And we work sometimes at school board races all the way up to the presidential. So there's a lot of elections for us to watch, and it's a lot of cheering and then some disappointment.
Hmm.
Obviously, that comes along with an election, but to watch not just how dialed in our team is to helping people win, but how invested they get in their wins is fun to see too.
And just to see it at like the important role you're playing in the process
Yep.
at work
Yeah.
is
Exactly.
pretty neat. Well, that's great. Well, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Again, you put it very well. It's uh, we're we're encouraged, we're optimistic
Yep.
heading into the end of the year and into a really big 2026. But we're not going to take the foot off the gas in terms of the work we do as providers, as
Hmm.
platforms, as solutions. So, kind of any last words as we wrap the year?
No, I mean, I think the number one thing that I think that I hope everyone can take away from this conversation is that it's the big red flags we should have been raised. I think that led to some really good early conversations in the spot that we're in today. But we're not seeing a negative impact that everyone was worried about. So we should be mindful of that. But as we already talked about and you just mentioned, doesn't mean that we should stop testing. Doesn't mean that we should stop having this be a concern you know because today is okay doesn't mean that tomorrow is. And as we start getting into 2026, I mean, the early primaries are going to happen, and then there's almost a primary every single week until we get till June, and then there's a couple weeks off, and then we have a bunch in August, and so
Hmm.
and then obviously the general. So we can't, if we're going to serve our clients well across the country, we need to be ready and prepared to pivot as we need to. And so, and then the last thing is don't make texts, don't make calls, the live paid calls, the last thing you think about, right? If you think you have enough volunteers to send every text message or make every phone call and knock every single door, perfect. Then you don't need us, right? Uh, but uh, but if you think that there's a chance that you might, don't wait till the end. Make that a part of your plan early, because you need those 7 touches. And if you can coordinate those 7 touches across all of the things that you're doing based upon your budget, you're going to be more successful.
Well said. Well, we're proud to be a partner of you guys,
Let's do. Thank you.
and it's really cool to see the work y'all are doing, and look forward to a great 2026.
Yeah,
So
us too. And well, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for your partnership as well.
great, appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.